Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thank you for being here. And I got some thank yous to go out today. And one of them came from a man who said that he had taken my Bigfoot class. He said it was better than any class he had taken even in college. Just so you guys know, I did a 20-session Bigfoot class right here on this channel. You can watch it. And you can watch it and you can send in the test. And if you pass the test and you follow the instructions, you get a patch. Now, I encourage you to do it. It's, I've had nothing but positive statements about it. So thank you very much. Now this man said it was the best class he'd ever taken, and he goes, you know, Dave, I felt like doing something for you. So he had, again, one of the nicest gifts. I've had many nice ones, but one of the nicest I've ever had. He sent me this knife. Look at this. Custom made. It says Bigfoot 101 on it. Isn't that something? I never like to name names, but I give appreciation when due. That was very, very nice. Thank you. Sitting in this room sometimes makes you think that I'm talking to the wall. I wonder sometimes if anyone's listening. But you guys always come back so strong, and very much appreciated. And some of you even write up great comments, and I don't mean positive to whatever I'm writing about or talking about, but just good comments about life in general and things. I've got a good friend out there that I actually went to school with. We'll call him CZ. CZ and I have been friends forever. This person sent me a note the other day saying, Dave, don't back down. Keep doing what you're doing. And this person's one of those people that has been very close to me over the years. And I actually didn't even know that they followed my posts. So just goes to show you, you never really know who's watching. But thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, in my previous video, I stated I was trying to do something for you. And what I said was, is every Christmas I try to do something. So from now until Christmas, anyone who buys one of our posters, and there's 2 posters up there right now, I will sign it and inscribe it to you, or to anyone you want. And after you make the purchase, send me an email at NA, like North America, NA Bigfoot Search at yahoo.com. Immediately after the purchase, send me the note. Because if I'm sitting there and the order comes in, I'm just going to sign it to you. So do it right away. And then I'll pair up the order with the email, and I'll sign it and get it out to you. Now, these are sent in tubes, and I can't fit a book in the tubes. I can fit patches and stickers, and that's about it. So if you order, don't plow a bunch of stuff on top of that order. Only order the poster and some stickers and patches. I have to curl up the patches and stickers a little bit to get them in, but they'll get in and they won't hurt the poster. So I just want you to understand that has to ship by itself that way. So that's my gift to you. Kind of keep in touch and etc. Thank you. And if you want to order the poster, DVDs, books, our web address is NA, like North America, NABigfootSearch.com. Go to the online store and you'll find all kinds of books, DVDs. I bet you didn't even know I had this. See this right here? That's the Sierra Sounds tape that Ron Moorhead puts out. I sell it for him. Why do I sell it? Because Ron and I are best buddies, and because this is in Missing 411, The Hunted. If you've seen The Hunted and you've heard some of those sounds, but you have not heard all of the sounds, and they're right here. And that's on a CD, the Sierra Sounds. So you can still pick that up from me. So let's get on to the story for today. This is a Missing 411 story. Seriously confusing and seriously heartbreaking. It involves a young boy. Now, you people out there in Texas are always pushing me, Dave, where's the Texas cases? Truthfully, not a lot of Texas cases. Don't quite understand why, but there isn't. But this is one. Involves a young boy named Gary Bray. Hear Hawk out there? And Gary went missing June 29th, 1955 at about 11:45 in the morning. He and his mom and his stepdad lived in a Dallas County, not in the city, in the county, in a place called Daniel-Dale, Texas. It's south of Dallas. Show you that. So up here is Dallas. Daniel-Dale's down here. Now it's still pretty rural today, today, but it was very, very, very rural in 55. Not a lot of homes out there, a lot of open fields, etc. So keep that in mind. Now, the way the incident rolls out is on June 29th at about 11:30, Gary's mom finishes feeding Gary and watches him go to their backyard. About 8 minutes later, Gary had a brother that was 5 years old and also had a stepbrother that was 7 years old in an adjacent backyard. They were playing and they hear Gary crying. So they run over to their yard next door and they look around and there's Gary sitting there crying. Now, when they were later questioned about this, they thought that he was just lonely and nothing was wrong, so they left him alone and they ran back to the other yard. That was the last confirmed sighting of Gary Bray. Now, at about 11:45, several minutes later, Mom goes out to the yard to check on Gary and he's not there. She searches around, calls for the other boys. They come over, they explain what happened. She doesn't see him, she doesn't hear him. She runs around. And she stated that Gary knew how to walk, but he doesn't talk much. Well, she searched the yard, searched all around. She was by herself with the kids, so she called the sheriff, Dallas County. Now, Gary was the son of his mom and his dad, but lived with his mom and his stepdad. His dad was Norman Bray. He was 23 years old, and he was in the U.S. Air Force at Lackland Air Force Base. His mother was 21 years old, and her name was Mrs. Travis Perrick. Mrs. Perrick calls the sheriff. 12:15, deputies start to arrive. And what do deputies do? At least 80% of the time, when a child goes missing, they're found in the house. Under a sofa, under a bed, somewhere, under a blanket, sleeping. They search the home. If they're not there, then they're in the yard, and they search the yard. First deputy gets there, second deputy gets there, they're searching, they're not finding him, they call for more assistance. By 6 p.m. that night, they had 150 law enforcement officers, firefighters, government employees, civil defense workers, friends of the family searching the fields around the home. Now, there were fields, scattered homes, scattered abandoned homes, cesspools, ice boxes, rural yards. Well, these 150 were already well organized. They were walking at 10-foot intervals through the fields, yelling his name, searching abandoned homes. Nothing. And they were reporting this back to the Dallas County Sheriff. He dispatched later that night a pair of detectives. They arrive and they start to go out and to interview people within a mile radius of the home. And there weren't a lot, but there were a few homes in that area. And they were interviewing the residences for a multitude of reasons. Number one, did they have friends over that day? Number two, did they take a delivery of anything from a furniture delivery truck or something? Any type of delivery. Number three, did they go out for a walk that day? Did they see anyone unusual in the neighborhood that they hadn't seen there before? Did anything seem out of place? Now, when you're doing this, you want to make the people feel comfortable in saying things that maybe they thought was meaningless. But sometimes it's those meaningless facts that crack a case. So they interviewed as many people as they could before it got too late. They pull back. They keep 3 or 4 deputies on scene, cruising the neighborhood, calling his name, looking for him during the night. The next morning, June 30th, they get 80 law enforcement personnel, state game wardens, deputies, police officers from other cities. What they were doing is they were going to go over the same area that they searched the day before. Smart thing to do, because if you're a missing 411 villager, you know how many times people are found in an area that had been previously searched. And as I was reading this, I was impressed that the Dallas County Sheriffs were doing this. They were being very, very comprehensive in their effort. Now, at about this time, Gary's father, Norman Bray, who was in the U.S. Air Force at Lackland Air Force Base, was contacted by the Dallas County Sheriffs, who had driven out that day. Interviewed him, interviewed his supervisors, commanders, and what they're doing is they're trying to get a profile of Mr. Bray. They first wanted to know, where was he when his son disappeared? Well, he was cleared right away because he was on maneuvers with his entire group under the supervision of several supervisors and seen throughout the day. And he hadn't gone anywhere. Cleared. And Dallas County also sent 2 deputies to Oklahoma to contact the father's parents, who were real close to Gary. Deputies went out and contacted the parents, talked to neighbors who confirmed that the parents were there, the grandparents were there the entire day. Cleared. Now, July 1st, Gary's mom, Mrs. Travis Perrick, was admitted to Parkland Hospital in Dallas, described as nervous exhaustion and near collapse. Some people couldn't understand this. I could. If I had a 22-month-old son who disappeared under my stewardship, I would be so grief-stricken and guilt-stricken beyond belief. I get it. Well, that day, July 1st, the Dallas County Sheriff, his name was Bill Decker, he held a press conference. Here's what he said. He says, I'm getting worried. The boy is not in the fields. We did an extensive search for 2 days. We found nothing. Also on July 1st, Norman Bray, the father, was given a 10-day emergency leave by the U.S. Air Force to go to Dallas and search for his son, first son. It's the minimum the Air Force could do. I'm surprised that they didn't send out air support to search. I think they could have done that, and they have done that before for other soldiers' families. Surprised they didn't do it. Now, at about this time, the sheriff's already admitted he doesn't have much. They've searched the area at least 2 times. They've interviewed a few of the neighbors. They've got nothing. I can tell you the frustration level amongst that group is going through the roof. Now, if this was today, the sheriff would be calling the FBI Child Abduction Task Force. They have them, and they fly to scenes like this and take over. It's one of the few things I can guarantee the FBI does that's phenomenal. How do I know? Because I've been involved. I've been to them. I've been involved in a search like this with the task force. Specifically, my sergeant and I were requested to come from San Jose to the Paulides class investigation. The FBI agent in charge running the task force at the time said, Dave, or said to my sergeant, we need some guys who can talk to street level criminals and can talk to people, because all I do is I have agents here who don't have a lot of experience talking to anybody. So can you send a couple of officers? So he picked me, and he and I went. And the people that were running the Child Abduction Task Force for the FBI were also former police officers. They knew how to get things done. They knew how to run a serious criminal investigation that's on a timeline. You got to get it done quick. July 2nd, Mrs. Perrick, Gary's mom, was released by the hospital and interviewed by detectives after she got home. And 2 detectives talked to her and wanted to get a minute-by-minute profile of what happened to her son. They'd already gotten the initial statements, but they wanted to know if they were missing anything. And it wasn't questioning her as a suspect. That wasn't it. It was just getting an understanding of what happened. Now, Norman Bray was on scene, helping in the search, answering questions, searching himself, trying to be a dad that's busy. And I get that too. If it was my son, I would be out in the field looking. And I'd be looking hard. Now, deputies were also going through the same routine, talking to more people, etc., in the neighborhood. On July 3rd, they made a specific effort and a big push to push the radius of the interviews out wider and talk to more people. As an example, let's say there's a robbery of a 7-Eleven at the corner of 1st and Main Street. Well, maybe there's somebody doing business at 10th and Main Street who saw a car racing by that location at that day. That was unusual. Weird things like that. So they pushed the perimeter out, and they kept interviewing residences in the neighborhood, asking the same questions I said before. And then they did a small area search around the house for an intensive 3rd time, to the point where detectives were getting down on their knees looking for evidence. And then they had detectives from surrounding jurisdictions come in. Why is that important? As good as the best detectives I've ever met, not all of them have all of the solutions to the crime. Sometimes it takes someone thinking outside the box to see something that's pretty obvious that other detectives aren't seeing. And I've worked around some phenomenal detectives. And I've been surprised at what they can come up with. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And I'm the first person willing to admit that of what I don't know. And by doing this, the detectives for Dallas County proved to me they were really good. Now, July 5th through the 8th, Other states had gotten this child alert bulletin, and a few other states had reported that they had found children that were dropped off at firehouses and things. And they thought maybe specifically one of these children looked a lot like Gary. So they contacted Dallas County. Dallas County actually flew a detective out, got some photos, sent them back, put them in front of Gary's mom, and she said, "It looks like my son, but it's not my son." And they asked her, "How sure are you?" And she said 100%. He had a small child birthmark on his neck that was slowly disappearing, but bright enough to be seen. And it wasn't there. July 9th. It was the fourth massive search of the area around the Parak home. They actually brought in and paid overtime to 25 off-duty deputies and Dallas police that went on a 10-hour search of the area around the home. So the incident happened on the 29th, and now it's the 9th. So you have about 10 days. 10 days, and you don't have a lead, and you don't have a suspect, and you don't have any evidence. Then you go back to the scene and you start searching again, and you see what you missed. And this shows me that at the time, the deputies had nothing. Had nothing. They didn't have a suspect. They didn't know. They were thinking at the time, maybe Gary walked. But let me go back to that scene again. He's in his backyard alone. His brothers hear him crying. They run over to him. For a 5- and a 7-year-old, they thought Gary was just lonely. He didn't say he was lonely. He didn't speak much. But they just thought. But what if it was something different? And then when they went back to that house, something happened. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, they did that massive search on the 9th of July. July 10th through the 28th. 4 deputies from Dallas County were working this case full time. Now, what does that mean? And what are they doing? Well, when you don't have anything, you start doing background checks on the family members. And that's not because they're a suspect. That's what you may think right away. Oh, they're looking at them. No. You're doing background checks on them to see where they've worked, who have they seen recently in the last week, who has been in their house or to their house in the last 2 weeks, the names, the locations of where their friends live. And you develop a profile of each parent and their friends. Why is this important? You would be very surprised how many people have friends that are pedophiles, that are child abusers, that are convicted felons. People never know. And I'm sorry, if a pedophile came up in one of these parents' pasts as being a coworker or someone they didn't know and just had them over with some friends, I guarantee that person would go to the top of the list in suspects, which is why you do this. It's time consuming, but when you've got nothing, this is what you do. And for somebody to steal Gary from the backyard on a human-to-human abduction, it would tell me that that person had to know the neighborhood and that backyard intimately to get in and out without being seen. Especially with the brothers right in the next backyard. Almost impossible, in my humble opinion. So, July 29th, Sheriff Decker made another public statement. stated that this case completely stumps him. Completely. Which means he just had a meeting with his detectives and they had nothing. But don't judge the detectives on that, because I'm thinking they were doing everything by the book. And for 1955, they were doing it how we would do it today. They were ahead of the game. The sheriff said that they were going to go out and they were going to interview neighbors again, see if they had any visitors on June 29th. They were also went and contacted the U.S. Postal Service. Now, you guys may laugh and say, wow, honestly, they're some of the best witnesses. The vast majority of all residential burglaries happen during the day. Who's in the neighborhood when you're at work during the day? U.S. Postal Service. They know what looks wrong, what looks right, and they know when somebody doesn't fit. So you go interview them. Now, this is 1955. What else do you have? Milk truck drivers. In those days, they used to deliver milk. You contact those guys. And you're trying to find just one person to give you a break on a case. 99% of the time, it's all going to go nowhere. But that 1% is all you're looking for. June 29th, 1956. 1 year after Gary disappears. Sheriff Decker has another press conference. He says, "We are no nearer a conclusion on this case than we were the first day we arrived." Holy cow. Holy cow. But that statement is something that brought this case to you from me. The Dallas Times-Herald offered a $1,000 reward for Gary at this point. Maybe the reward should have been 10 grand, but for 1955, that was a lot of money. September 17th, 1959, 4 years and a few months later. Big article in the local paper. No trace was ever found of Gary. No leads, no suspects, no nothing. Which is why we are here today. I consider that impossible. Sorry, I just do. A little 22-month-old boy doesn't disappear from his backyard without leaving evidence behind. No scent trail, no tracks, no witnesses, no unusual conduct, nothing heard. It's beyond the realm of possibility, I think. And remember, he couldn't talk very well at all. He could walk. Detectives said that the footprint that Gary gave the hospital at birth, puts on your birth certificate, was smudged and was worthless. And in 1955, that's really about all they could get to match a baby. Now today it's entirely different. We've got DNA. I looked and I could not find if his parents ever gave a DNA sample, or if Dallas County Sheriff's ever made an attempt to get a DNA from his brother, etc., who hopefully is still alive. I consider this one of Texas's greatest mysteries. I've never heard of it before. We found it just a couple weeks ago. And I can only imagine the guilt that Gary's mom carried with her the rest of her life. But what if it was something that was beyond her ability to stop. You've got to leave kids alone sometimes. It's just the way the world is. In your own backyard, considered to be one of the safest places to leave a child. With his two brothers in the next yard. I don't get it. Sorry, just don't get it. So that's the story for today. One case, one special edition of Missing 411. Please share this with your social media, especially if you're in Texas. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. I hope to read your comments. And please know you are appreciated. Paulides out.